All right, time for Best Bets here on HQ, presented by FanDuel. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Jacqueline D'Agostino, alongside Amanda Guerra and Danny Kanell. It's great to be here. It feels like this has been a long time coming, and now we're almost towards the end of the college football season. I'm kind of sad, guys.
No.
Oh, I'm sad. Yeah.
I don't like it when college football ends, but I don't like having to wait this long for the national championship.
Yes.
How about that? So here's the good news, I guess, for me at least. We are now less than a week away from the national championship. Notre Dame, Ohio State going at it. It would be the 9th overall national championship for the Buckeyes, the 12th for the Fighting Irish. When it comes, though, keep in mind, for Marcus Freeman going against Ryan Day, they have only met twice before. Each time in the regular season, Ryan Day won each time. However, both of these Tims, Danny Kanell, this to make you happy, bucking the trend because it's the first time since 2004-2005 there has not been an SEC team in back-to-back games. How about that? Taking a look.
I'm gonna miss all those fans.
I know.
And your Twitter mentions are, I'm sure they're just not popping off like they used to with the SEC
and
not in it.
I do want to mention, as you look at this is the AP poll era. So, of course, Notre Dame's, their national championships go a little bit beyond that. Overall, it would be 12 for the Fighting Irish. Let's get you ready for the Natty coming up a week from Monday, which was yesterday. Today is Tuesday. Time's still a little weird right now.
Yeah.
Chip Patterson joining the conversation. We're getting to the end of the first time we've seen the 12-team playoff. And from listening to you guys in the Cover 3 podcast, from listening to everybody, it seems like the biggest complaints, Danny, have been how teams got in the seeding. Overall, how do you feel about the first 12-team playoff?
I think it's been awesome. I think it's been a successful experiment for the sport as a whole. I thought we had one of the more entertaining regular seasons where in the month of November we had teams that were not used to the playoff conversation were right there on the bubble, like a South Carolina who was in that conversation, like an Iowa State who had a chance. And then how about the teams that actually did get into the playoffs? SMU, Arizona State, Indiana. Those teams had an opportunity that never in a million years would have dreamed to be able to play for a national championship. So I thought that was phenomenal. The only quirk that I thought that a lot of people had problems with, and I would agree, was the seeding. The rankings made no sense compared to rankings versus seedings. They're going to correct it. It's just a matter of when. I think they're going to let it roll for one more year, but that to me is the biggest flaw, and I don't think it's that big of a deal.
Yeah, the way it was intended, it is a success. They looked at the number of teams that were still in the mix for the playoff in November, and I think that's really important, Danny, to mention that. And they were worried about fans that were checking out. And instead, we expanded that group. And the number of teams that were still in the hunt into November, you could look down in the rankings, it was all the way down into the mid-20s. Not everybody in the top 25 had the same shot, but when you consider the Big 12 race, when you consider the ACC race, there were teams that were still would have been well outside of the top 4 picture that were still in it. So if you were trying to drive interest, if you were trying to drive the amount of attention and investment in the playoff in that final month of the regular season, it was a success. But this is more of a personal complaint because I understand that the sport can evolve, but I do think we are evolving into a new era where the team that will be crowned the national champion is simply the one that survived. It is a battle of attrition. It is a battle of being able to get into the 14th, the 15th, the 16th game of the season as healthy as you possibly can be. I mean, everyone is just hanging on by a string right now. We are almost into Stanley Cup playoffs territory in terms of the champion at the end is just who survived that final race. College football's history traditionally crowned who was the best in the regular season. We saw the Big Ten champion get knocked out in its first game. We saw the SEC champion get knocked out in its first game. And so I do think that conference championships are going to be belittled a little bit. I think that there is an aspect of the regular season which is taking a little bit of a hit. But overall, I'm willing to evolve. I'm willing to move forward into this new era because the amount of teams that have a shot is bigger than ever. And I do understand that's a good thing.
Yeah, 12 teams. We might be talking about 16 teams. And
do you think bowl games took a hit?
I do, but the ratings bear out that they didn't because people still tune in to watch bowl games. I mean, they really do. And I don't like that we don't see guys full participation.
Yeah.
Feels like a lot of the top tier players opt out. But there is an appetite in our country for college football. And if it's on TV, the fans don't care. Like, they will watch no matter who's playing.
Yeah, Danny was definitely watching the Gasparilla Bowl to cheer on his favorite Florida Gators.
Right.
We all know that. All right, let's get into the Natty with Ohio State and Notre Dame. And, man, for Ryan Day, it's been a little bit of a roller roller coaster because we know that fan base there in Columbus is a little volatile. You know, they lose to Michigan, people are calling for his job. They lose to Oregon earlier in the regular season and then just bulldoze through in the CFP. So Chip, I'll start with you. Whether they win, whether they lose, where are you at on Ryan Day? Because he goes from, you know, the hot seat to seemingly being totally safe, but do you see it that way?
I don't think he's totally safe, at least not in the eyes of an Ohio State fan. You know, I was going into the Texas game thinking this is a must-win game. And now looking at the national championship, it's all about expectations because fans will constantly move goalposts on you. And if Ohio State does end up closing as an 8.5, maybe even 9-point favorite in this game, and then go on to lose, what it would go down as is one of the biggest upsets in a national championship game. And so for Ryan Day, now I think that it is still a little bit closer to that must-win status if you want to talk about not truly the hot seat, but if you want to talk about having all of those fans on your side, all of those fans willing to forget, you know, 4 straight losses to Michigan, or at least maybe temporarily forget 4 straight losses to Michigan, I think that losing this game would put him right back in the crosshairs of a lot of the most angry Ohio State fans. But there is no doubt that if you are a sensible, logical Ohio State fan, and I know they are out there, heck, some of them work at CBS Sports, I think that you have to respect the way that he was able to self-scout and adjust and be able to say, we did that wrong. How can we get better? All those days off between Michigan and the opener against Tennessee, this Buckeyes team, this Buckeyes coaching staff, they flipped a switch, and that's all a credit to Ryan Day.
No doubt. I think, you know, we mentioned bittersweet, Amanda, coming in here talking about the way it is at the end of the season. I think if Ryan Day wins the national championship, it'll be bittersweet because I'm sure there's a part of him, it's like, looking up in the stands, seeing half those fans being like, all right, you guys wanted me fired, you guys didn't. It can be lonely at the top, and it's probably one of the top 3 jobs with the most pressure and the most expectations on it. And he's handled it really well. And when Chip and I and Tom and Bud were in Indianapolis at the Big Ten Championship game, you knew, at the media days, you knew it was national championship or bust. Like, that was the bar that was set. 2 former coaches said this was the most talented roster this school has ever seen amassed on one team. So he knew what was at stake. And then I feel like there was absolute devastation when they lost for the 4th time. But it's been quite the redemption story. And I know, I've played on different teams where there can be such a thing as a good loss. I know Ohio State fans will never view it as a good loss. But for whatever reason, it feels like it galvanized this team. It brought them together, gave them more of that us against the world mentality. And they have rallied since then. They are 1 game away from making it, all that and much more.
It's a very similar conversation for Notre Dame. Not Marcus Freeman. The only way they're going to lose him, sorry, is probably the Bears. Not that that's going to happen, but the rumors are out there that he's going to interview for that job. But the redemption and just going up against all the obstacles, Notre Dame was 100-1 odds to make the national championship after they lost to Northern Illinois. That was their 2nd game of the season. If I can count correctly, they have won 13 straight since then. Okay, good. I can count correctly. The graphic confirms that. But Danny, I think it is. Look at the last game. They were down at halftime. I don't know what the bleep Marcus Freeman is telling them before games or at halftime, but by all means, never will this team out.
This is the most resilient team I've seen in recent memory. When you talk about coming into the season, they were facing Texas A&M, lost their starting left tackle. Then they lose his backup, and they're on their 3rd team left tackle. And that's just one example at one position where they have lost guys all season long. And they've been able to come back time and time again. And Marcus Freeman has endured his share of criticism. I remember the unfortunate quote he had after they lost to Northern Illinois. He said, well, we've been here before, kind of reminding everybody that they had lost to Marshall, another group of team with massive expectations the year before. So they have kept themselves together. They ran the table and did it impressively so there was no question they belonged in this playoff. And then even in this playoff, being down at various times in different games, coming back, having more injuries, which again, they're going to have to undergo again without their left tackle who just got hurt in the game against Penn State. They have been the most resilient team I can remember, and I think it speaks volumes to Marcus Freeman and the culture that he's created of a team environment within that locker room.
So he took down Curt Cignetti, widely viewed as one of the national coach of the year. He took down King Kirby. and outcoached Kirby Smart in ways that are tactical, both that we saw, running the punt team on and off, ways to steal a possession. But also, Notre Dame was the better prepared team to win on that day in New Orleans under extremely unfortunate circumstances, unlike anything that we had expected. Notre Dame was more mentally prepared. Georgia was making mistakes. Notre Dame was making the plays to win. He follows that up by storming back from a deficit against James Franklin and Penn State, one of the most consistent programs of the college football playoff era. This is a coach who at CBS Sports we had ranked as the 24th coach in the country. And when you consider the way that he got this team back, and I love resilient, Danny, but I think that in the regular season, I also saw relentless, because they were running the score up on people. He was trying to build an edge and a competitive mentality, knowing that they could not afford another loss after Northern Illinois. I think that has benefited them throughout this college football playoff. 24th coming into the season? This is a top 10 coach in America, if you ask me. And that's the kind of thing, the growth that I've seen from a coach who lost to Marshall, only had 10 men on the field at the goal line against Ohio State. We have seen a young rising star get even better right before our eyes. And so now all of the run that we've seen during this winning streak, a lot of it I do tie back to their head coach.
Yeah, we're talking about that loss to Northern Illinois, and it seems like literally a decade ago. It doesn't even look like the same team. We know there's a lot of talent on both of these teams, Ohio State and Notre Dame. But we're also dealing with the top two teams in scoring defense. Danny, do you think this is just going to be a gritty defensive battle that we see in this title game?
I think for one team, absolutely. Like, Notre Dame's offense isn't going to light up the scoreboard anyway. I think Notre Dame would love it to be an ugly, gritty game.
The over did hit, though, against Penn State. Barely, right?
Barely. Yeah, and it was looking like a winner at halftime. I'm still mad about that. Because I did like the under in that one. But I think Texas somewhat against Ohio State showcased a little bit more of how you don't have to get just steamrolled by this Ohio State team. They did hold Jeremiah Smith to one catch, helped him over the top. And this Notre Dame team is physically pretty similar to what Michigan runs. And Michigan was able to control this Ohio State offense. So, yes, I think Notre Dame would love it. That will be the big question mark in my mind. If Notre Dame is in this game in the fourth quarter, it will be a lower scoring affair, and you're going to see these two defenses on the play. We saw the defensive play from both Caleb Downs on second down when there was the toss that he blew it up. We saw Jack Sawyer with the infamous play that's going to go down in history there. And for Notre Dame, we saw them come up with a big interception late in the game off Drew Aller to seal that victory for them. So, yes, I think this is going to be a defensive first type of game.
I'm not surprised that teams that are good at scoring defense are playing for the title. But how about defensive scoring? Or maybe even just points off turnovers, because in a game like this, I do think that being able to force those turnovers, come up with special teams plays, create those short fields, or like we've seen from Notre Dame, and of course we saw from Jack Sawyer in the semifinals, be able to take it all the way to the house. Those are going to be the plays that end up deciding this game. And so they've been excellent defenses all the way around, but when you've got those two defenses creating kind of a stalemate offensively, that's when I start to look to say, okay, whether it is Xavier Watts, whether it is a Jack Sawyer, a Caleb Downs, you have uniquely gifted playmakers on the defensive side of the ball and on special teams that can really change the tenor of the game. Notre Dame probably does need some short fields. Ohio State could end the game with a big punt return touchdown. I'm looking at, yes, the scoring defense, but also can we get some defensive scoring? Because that is a big X factor in this matchup.
A big X factor on the defense when it comes to the offense. I mean, I think we would agree, personnel-wise, the edge goes to Ohio State in this one. But we talk about the resilience of Notre Dame, and look, they are here for a reason. Ohio State favored in this one by 8.5. We knew it was going to be a big number, Total 45 and a hook. Oof. Danny Kanell, give us a play in this game. I don't love it because you're not picking a side, but go ahead.
Well, geez, now you're throwing these numbers, and I'm like, man, maybe I should just lay them here with Ohio State. Maybe this is me wanting to will a close game into existence, and I gave you the formula. I do too, yeah. But I do think Notre Dame, and I was tempted. I would lean towards Notre Dame and the points, but I think the safer play is the under in this one, because if you like Notre Dame, I think you're kind of protected because that's the way the game would unfold. It would be a lower scoring game, and if Ohio State does run away with it, I think you could see a score like 35-7 or somewhere in that vicinity, 35-10, where maybe it's dominated by Ohio State, but I don't think they put up a 50 burger in this game. But I could see Notre Dame struggling to score against that defense of Ohio State that just, is equally as impressive as that offense. So I think the smartest play in this game is take the under. I think Notre Dame's going to try to drag Ohio State down in the mud with them, like muck it up, make it ugly, try to control the time of possession, extend drives, and a mobile quarterback, which Riley Leonard is, can do that, and he is very adept at managing the game, not turning it over, playing keep away. So I like the under as my favorite play. I know, but I would lean towards Notre Dame.
I'm going to go ahead and lay it.
Yeah, see,
I'm not going to look back. Yeah. No. I'm going to lay it. And look, that graphic was very informative. And that's one place where I'm starting. That at the end of this long season where Notre Dame's been able to string one thing after another and get through these incredible battles without all these players, you're going up against an Ohio State team that has a talent advantage. You're going up against an Ohio State team that has a health advantage. And it really does seem like they've got a motivational edge that Ohio State football doesn't always have in these kind of spots, that revenge angle. And so I'm going to take the Buckeyes. I'm going to lay these points. I don't think it's going to be a true blowout in the way of a Georgia TCU, but it might be the kind of game that feels lopsided, but the cover ends up being a little bit of a sweat. But I will take Ohio State. I think they win by 10 or more.
All right, it is time for a parlay pick presented by FanDuel. Chip Patterson, you have the honors. Give us your parlay, and there's a little bit of sweating out and under in here. Spoiler alert.
I want to see a treasure map.
Oh, yeah, it is a treasure map. Okay, so we start in the first half where we've seen things be a little bit tight. Danny mentioned exactly what we saw down in that Orange Bowl as these two teams feel each other out. First half, under 23.5. Lots of different ways to bring that home. Lots of different game scripts should get us there. Then this is one of my favorite plays for the entire game. Quinshon Judkins over 69.5 rushing and receiving yards. We remember Travion Henderson, his backfield mate with that long touchdown on the screen pass. Quinshon Judkins very quietly 3 catches for 22 yards. I think both backs are a part of the passing game. Quinshon Judkins with that passing game action plus his regular rushing load should be able to get us to 70 or more. And finally, Ohio State team total over 27.5. I've got them in that 28, 30, 31 range. Not too much more, but I do think that all of those injuries end up piling up in a way that Ohio State can kind of just pour it on late, celebrate the win, and be able to go in as champions, because nothing's better than winning the title the year after your rival does. So Michigan wins it last year, Ohio State wins it this year.
Chip Patterson, I like it. Danny, I would like to say I am not against the under, but wild card round was a snooze fest, except the Commanders games, and all of these games were low scoring, so that is why I'm a little peeved. And I need a good national championship game to make me a little bit happier here. Chip and Danny, we appreciate it. By the way, we want to let you know when it comes to FanDuel, football fans, buckle up. For the first time ever, FanDuel is giving all customers a no-sweat same-game parlay for 5 straight days of playoff football. You heard that right there. Plus, new FanDuel customers, if you are new, you can get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed on your first $5 bet.